We're just gonna kidnap you, take you out and hold you for
Yeah, that's fine. I'm okay.
I'm used to it. I would ask hearing none, I will ask. Next thing, I'm looking for process. Here, participate from those minutes. All right. All right, next item. Here, to item 5. We'll make the green light good, so make you happy. All right, so with Stallings, just, you know, we're finishing up our budget for the year. And we have a meeting next week, or next Monday, where we'll be covering the budget. I'm not used to hearing my voice like that. So that's probably one of the bigger things that's going on in Stallings right now. I mean, obviously, we did take I don't know if I told everybody, we did sign our final contract with DOT, handing Potter and Pleasant Plains intersection back to DOT, which was a major chess game, if you want to say that, where we've had multiple pieces going on for like the last couple of years. And so finally that's taken care of. Just a note there, they were working off of an old plat to determine whether or not all the utilities were moved, and they found a new gas line. So it's going to be late this year before they can actually move that gas line and let it go to bid for that project. So we're looking forward to that. Trying to think what else big things are going on in Stallings. We got a lot of things going on in our Parks and Rec department. One of those bigger events is coming up the weekend after the July 4th. We've got a barbecue and brews event. So invite everybody to come out for that. I do want to talk about, I'm going to wait a little bit, but I'm going to talk about during our old business a little bit about what happened with our meeting in the sewer capacity. And but I'll hold that one until later. Then I'm trying to think. It's been kind of quiet in Stallings. Yeah, I mean, this one topic's probably dominated a lot of the conversation, but that's really it. I mean, we've been, I guess because it's summer, things have been, other than budget, things have been pretty quiet.
Amanda, how's Wesley Chapel?
Nice and quiet too. We are still
This is
waiting.
fake wood, by the way. No.
We are still kind of waiting on our final numbers for our dam remediation. The preliminary numbers was 800,000, and we've probably already spent 200,000 getting to this point. We are going to apply for FEMA funding to hopefully offset the cost of that. We had a car show a couple weeks ago, which had a really nice turnout and it was really fun. And then we are looking forward and planning for our 25th anniversary celebration on July 15th, starting at 10 at Dogwood Park. We also are finalizing plans to do National Night Out on the first Tuesday of October. We did it last year after taking a couple of years hiatus, and it was a really nice event. So we're excited about partnering with the sheriff's office and all the public service agencies that we can. We have undergone a pretty significant staff transition when our clerk and finance officer of 19 years retired. But we are moving forward and doing well, so.
All right, well, very good. Well, as far as Weddington, just a few things I've written down here. We too got our budget budget finalized for the next year. We were able to lower the tax rate from what it was last year. We're not quite back to revenue neutral, but hopefully, as our town finance officer was telling us, if the numbers continue to improve and look as good as they did this past year, hopefully we would be able to do that next fall and get us back to a revenue neutral number, you know, from that last reevaluation that we had.
You can send us some.
Understand. Just a few other things that are going on. We're still, the company that we have contracted with to do our land use survey and review for us, scheduled a meeting for this past Monday for more public input. And I think they're going to have to schedule another one, I was told, because one of the primary folks that was supposed to be there, she missed a connecting flight and was not able to be there. But that's an ongoing process for the review of our land use plan. Talked about that. We too are going to be looking for a new planner. The planner that we did have and hired about a year ago, his spouse got apparently a very nice job offer down in Florida. So he is down in Florida right now, but fortunately he is able to, he's kind of working remote, and we are still able to get the planning stuff done that we need to, even with his absence. But we are going to be looking for a new town planner. A couple other things that have kind of came up at the last meeting, and I'm sure this is an issue not just for us, but everybody around here, is it's for us, it's the speeding on Providence Road, the excessive speeds of people coming down and back. I did have a chance to talk to Deputy Crop, who's one of our deputies over there. And he basically told me that, yes, you know, they try to do focused enforcement in different areas, but literally he said, frankly, Jeff, with these things, he said, as soon as we get a car or two out there, people are on these phones going, hey, they're doing speed checks on Providence, you know, blah, blah, blah. And he said, as soon as we go somewhere, they know where we are. However, he did mention one thing that this group may want to consider. He said the state does allow or does fund money for just speed control, if you want to call it traffic control officers or deputies, who that is their only job, is that they are out writing tickets for people speeding, you know, running red lights, things like that. He said, but that program, I think there's one piece, and I do not have it off the top of my head, there's one other community in the county that has that they applied to the state, they got the grant, it's like a grant money type of thing, but then they got that officer assigned, and that's what that officer does from all the time they're on duty. So because it's not like, you know, when they're waiting and having to respond to other calls for break-ins or things like that, that is their assignment. So
Do you know what community that is?
well, I don't know, and that's what I said. If we want to, as a group, you know, for our little area of the county over here, if we want to look into that, let me know, and I will talk to him again and try to get more information about it. But he said that could be an option. if, because again, like, if we had one, we could have him working, the Marvin area for a while, one day and then moving around, but that type of thing. Last thing I'll mention is there was an article that was published in the news about the Latter-day Saints building a Mormon temple in Weddington. We already have a Mormon church off Hemby Road, but this was an announcement, I guess, 2 or 3 weeks ago that they were going to build a Mormon temple there in our town. And it generated a lot of message traffic to the town council and things like that. And the only update I have is that I was told that earlier this week, they did finally make an official contact with Brian, with the town planner, saying they were going to present something, or make a formal presentation about it. But it would be a conditional zoning item. So it would not be just a by right that they can, if they have the property, they can do it. Even though, church facilities are a permitted use, it would still have to go through the conditional zoning process to get done.
And there's a lot of restrictions on even denying church religion.
Right. So we will have to see where that goes. But
wouldn't they be focused on the sewer thing too?
I would think so. I would think so. How's everybody in Marvin, Jim?
Well, this is new for me because the mayor and Andy are out, but I see him there. I'll go through the list and then I'll turn it over to, he's driving down the road. I don't want him to wreck. So we just got through with our Marvin Day celebration and for the second year, and it was a tremendous success. We had a great turnout. We had a lot of people show up, but we had a lot of vendors there, but we had the fire and rescue, the police, the sheriff's department, everyone was really involved in it. This was the first time we did it down at Eford Park. So that was a huge success for us. It allowed us to kind of show off Eford Park because there are people still in Marvin that don't know where Eford Park is. When you say it, they're like, where's that? But it is in Marvin. And it really showed up well. We had a couple bands that came in and they did a tremendous job. We did the fireworks show. So it was a tremendous success for Marvin. And again, it's just, it's our second Marvin Day celebration for, kind of being proud of who we are. As I've always said, if Mayberry can have a Mayberry Day, then Marvin should be able to have a Marvin Day. So that was a success. We also just got notification that they're going to begin work on a roundabout here on July 10th. Yeah, the one right up here, Marvin Newtown Road. So that's going to probably impact a lot of people coming from Waxhaw and from all over. So we're going to get communications out of the different rerouting of vehicles and stuff like that. But it's exciting for us because that's something that we've been waiting on for a couple of years, several years. And it's always been kind of pushed off. So we're excited to get that going and certainly get it completed. Our staff did a tremendous job, did a great job on getting our budget put together. We had, so the budget was approved. So we really looked good there. We looked strong. Neighborhood curb, we have the typical neighborhood curb and gutter issues that we're working through. And it's, they always, you would think they'd be easy, but they're not. Some are complicated because you're dealing with right of ways and DOT and so forth and so on. But we're having that. We also are working with the National Night Out. Now, is yours going to be the first Tuesday in August?
No, we're going to do October. It's not so hot.
Okay,
That's
so
the
we
alternate day.
had planned on that, but ours is still going to be the first Tuesday in August. So we're looking at pulling all the resources together to make that a success for us. And we just hired a new events manager here in Marvin, which is going to take over a lot of those responsibilities, not only for Marvin Day, but will take over for National Night Out and some of the, the tree lighting, the Christmas tree lighting, all the other events that kind of wrap around Marvin. So, but we've had a busy summer. But those are really kind of the highlights. Joe, did I leave something out?
No. Well, hi everyone. Sorry, this is the second time in a row, I think, that we've hosted it and I had to be away, but this was a family reunion down at the beach with my wife's family. So unfortunately I could not escape this one, but they're on the beach about 2 blocks that way. And I'm sitting in my truck saying hello, just checking in with you guys. But no, I think Jamie, you captured it, most of it. The bigger thing, some of the big things that we're one step closer on the geo bond. Maybe you can talk about that to make it easier with all the trails, I want to say rails. It's not rails, it's trails and greenways, along with finishing out the roads. We're trying to do it in one bond that captures all of that. And we're just trying to figure out what the public, the citizens, what their appetite would be for, if anything, because it would be a tax raise with the sunset clause, but we're just looking to finish off the roads and add in some. And then the new park is we're going to be replacing all the equipment with at the park at Eford Park. So
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right, Waxaw. Well, it's been a great week down there again. We've been real lucky to continue even with the weather on our East-North Main project, which is probably about 30 days away to get that done. Going vertical on our town campus project over there, which is where we'll house our new town hall and our Parks and Rec and our public services departments will be on that 17-acre site at the corner of Waxaw, Marvin, and Kensington over there. We had a very successful closing on an acquisition. We bought a facility in town over on Waxaw Marvin Road, used to be called the Athletic Barn. That seller needed to sell, so we were in position to do that. It's a $2.5 million acquisition to do that. We're in the financial position to do it, and it was also seller financed. So that was very helpful to be able to do that as well. So we're going to turn that into a community center. And so the uses aren't fully defined yet, but for the money that we paid for it, I could not even have built half a building for that. So it was a great win-win for both. And that seller had a long-standing relationship with our Parks and Rec director. And that's how that deal came to the table. And, you know, like in almost any real estate deal, the seller controls who they want to sell it to. And we just were the chosen ones to be able to close that deal. There were other suitors, and almost like in the residential market, you have a house priced at X amount, but you know that house will sell for more and you better get your offer in that way. We were successful in doing that. We also have our 4th of July parade coming on there, weather permitting again. There's a policy I know that we had to put out because we have to pay attention to the safety issues around us. It's not just, oh, we're not afraid of, you know, getting wet or Ron getting his hair wet or something. It's a little bit more than that because of all the electronics on the floats, the people that work for us, the people that come out. It really comes down to a safety issue. So if somebody wants to check to see if that parade is going to go on, just keep following the website that we have, our town website, and they have criteria there that'll decide. We have several weather services that we use, and then criteria with the entire team. So police, fire, public safety, all those guys get together and they make that call at the last minute. A lot of people think, oh, I just made it just because. No, it doesn't work that way. So anyway, we've had a great week, and talk about trails and things like that. Last night, most of you know I chair CARPO, the Transportation Board, but part of that is we were awarded a grant, town of Waxhaw, probably because we know a process better than we used to, but we got a $392,000 grant yesterday to build onto our parks and trail system. So it's been a good week. So
You might have to educate the rest of us on.
be more than happy to. And speaking on with that hat on, you know, my staff over there is more than happy and willing to come down and do a 101 for anybody or collectively. It is a very sophisticated process. I actually had a town hall Tuesday night, and the town hall is where I get up and, you know, talk to anybody and that'll come and talk to me. But, you know, showed them, they think that, you know, in transportation issues, you just lobby really hard and you can probably get it. That day of good old boy lobbying is probably left a long time ago, and it's given way to data and algorithms. And it's very complex, very sophisticated, as you guys sit in on some of it. And, you know, you were there the other night. I mean, it's a very, very complicated process, and it is a process like everything is in government. But if you guys want to either collectively or individually, let me know and I'll get that team together and they'll come down. I think they've come down to.
A grant for what?
It was parks and trails. It was basically, if I could say it easily like that. So it was part of a supplemental fund that was available, but we applied. we got that. I think it was Huntersville got 3.5 million for something different than that, but those were the supplemental fund categories that we could use. So, but if you want to do that, that team is more than willing to come out.
All right.
So, and that's it.
I was gonna put.
Mineral Spring. Mineral Spring.
300,000, that's like 10 feet, right?
Yeah, about that. Yeah, it's a bunch of mulch. So,
Not a lot going on in Mineral Springs, but we had our meeting a couple of weeks ago and excuse me, an emphasis, of course, was on finalizing our budget, which was a pretty simple process, really, because there's not a lot of things that change in Mineral Springs. So we got that behind us. We looked at some other things in terms of capital investment, and one of the things that's going on is improving the appearance of our city hall. That's been there for a few years now. That was a remodeled building years ago, and we're looking at doing some things on the interior to make it newer and more consumer friendly, because when you sit in the audience, you can't see us. The podium is about right here at eye level. So Rick, having sat in a number of venues now, says, nah, he's short and it's too tall and we got to make it smaller. So we're going to do that. We've also refurbished and made plans and actually executed the plan to refurbish the outside. We had some agronomists come in, do some tree trimming and remove actually all the bushes that were in front of the city hall. They're going to be replaced with new modern ones to freshen it up. One of the things that is going on actually this weekend is we're on the Union County movie schedule. So we're going to have our movie hopefully without rain on the 30th. And then the other thing that we're looking at is preparing for our fall festival, which is going to take place the first week in September. So those are the things that we kind of worked on our last meeting, and we'll see how that progresses.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Super. All right, starting here on old business, I would like to start off by introducing Amanda. Or am I got the bad old names here? I've got Angela. Met Angela. Angela came and gave a presentation to our town council on the new library facility that is coming and currently being built off Cuthbertson here in our area. And it was such an information-filled presentation. I said, well, we're having a meeting on Thursday. Would you ladies like to come out and let the rest of the community, because again, everybody on this side of town, so to speak, would be able to use this facility. And she's got some very great information to share. And so I wanted to offer that opportunity, and here we go.
Right, and I'm going to turn it over to our outstanding library director, Nina Chaffin, and she's going to give an overview of the library, the new library that we're so excited about. And then after that, we'll take some questions about programming and some expectations. And then I'll follow it up. I believe we were at WUMA last July. So
Sounds about right.
I'll follow.
if you guys nuzzle up to the microphone as well, so everybody else who's listening, Joe especially, can hear all that.
Okay. Like Angela said, we were at Weddington on Tuesday and gave a presentation about the library, where we are, where it's going. And so he invited us to come and share it with you all. So instead of doing a formal PowerPoint, I just printed off some slides to kind of go over the highlights, because we've spoken to this group before. It's been a while. I think it was before we ever broke ground. So now we have a little bit more information to share with you, and it's becoming more of a reality. It has walls, so we can actually physically see the library. So I just wanted to go through a little bit about the library and then let Angela talk about the foundation. So in your packet, you've got some statistics, just a high level overview of who we are and what we do. Just keep in mind, these numbers are almost a year old. They run our fiscal year, which starts July 1. So we're about to compile all of the years all over again for this year that we just are finishing. So we're getting back to where we used to be before COVID. Slowly but surely, our numbers are going back up in the right direction. We're seeing a lot more people coming through our doors. It's a lot busier. Our programs are more heavily attended. So all positive things since COVID and when we had to shut down. Just to remind you what the library is going to ultimately look like, that's on the next slide. So you have the rendering of the building from Cuthbertson Road. So as you drive by, that is what you will ultimately see. The floor plan is the next one, and that just lays out the how everything will be laid out inside the building. You've got the children's area when you walk in the door to the right. And the nice part about that space is that there's a dedicated story time nook. And there's also a dedicated space for children's programming so that we can conduct programming anytime we need to, and we don't have to fight for space within our own facility to be able to do that. We do have a meeting space. It's about the size of the one at the Indian Trail Library, if you've been there. And overall, this library is about 20,000 square feet. We needed to build 35,000. For frame of reference, Monroe is about 32,000 if you've been there, and Indian Trail is about 12. So this one will be bigger than Indian Trail, but smaller than Monroe. And the other nice thing about this library is it has a STEAM lab. We don't have one of those anywhere else besides the main library. So we're excited about being able to provide a lot of opportunity through that space with as far as programming goes. And then we also have a dedicated teen space as well, since we're so close to the schools. We wanted to ensure the teens had somewhere to come and hang out. So there's a lot of nice things. In addition, we are utilizing the outdoor space as well. So there's an actual covered patio. Ultimately, the library is supposed to be shaped like a U, but we're only building the L right now. And on the inside of that L is where the green space is. So there'll be a patio that's covered. You could sit outside, read, do whatever else you needed to use your laptop, but there'll be a space for that as well. Our construction schedule for the most part is on track. This week of rain might slow us down just a bit, but so far we're supposed to be slated with substantial completion sometime in January. So everything is still on that plan today. We're going to knock on wood and make sure that it continues that way. But right now, if you drive by, you will see the next page has a picture of what it currently looks like. So there are actual walls up. You can actually see the structure. It's starting to actually take shape. So what questions do you have for me? Any?
I don't necessarily have questions, but I know you mentioned to our group about just the education opportunities
Yes.
here for the, like all the high school kids are automatically enrolled now.
Yes.
They're like ID
Yes.
and the last four of
Their
phone
PIN.
number or
Yes.
something they could-
You remembered well.
It just sounded like a lot of very exciting opportunities at this facility for
Yes.
people that live in this area.
Yes,
to be
there
able
is.
to use. And
So-
not just the kids and the teenagers, but the
Yes.
more senior among us as well.
Yes, we serve all ages. So we serve from birth to death, quite frankly. So everybody who walks the doors is a potential patron. So what you were alluding to is we do have a LEAP program. LEAP stands for Library and Educators as Partners. And every student who's a public school student is automatically given a library card. It's their student ID and it's their PIN. There's no physical card given, but that's how they can access all of our resources. They're entitled to check out books, but they do not accrue overdue fines. So that is in place, and that's been in place for several years now. And so then we do have a teen and technology librarian too, who's working to ensure that our teen space is just as inviting to the kids that are going to be right down the road at Cuthbertson, and be able to do the programming there. But we serve all ages. So we've got a very robust volunteer program. Where we'll do book clubs. We have programming for all ages. This morning, I know it sounds not something you really want to think about, but we're doing an end of life series program on how to prepare for things that people probably don't think about until it's sometimes too late. So we provide that educational program, but then we also have fun. And currently in the children's library in Monroe, we're hatching eggs, little chicks and eggs. And we're going to have a chick's birthday party very soon too. So there's a lot of educational opportunities for all ages. And so we're really excited about this space because the current Waxhaw Library, if you've been, is about 2,900 square feet. And we can't do any sort of programming in the space. So we utilize the VFW in Waxhaw to be able to host our program. So we are beyond ecstatic to be able to open up this facility and be able to truly serve the western side of the county like we need to. So I'm going to turn it over to Angela and let her talk a little bit about the foundation.
As Jeff mentioned, I am the chair of the Union County Library Foundation. I ended up doing that in 2020 by default. The chair decided to resign right as we were getting ready for this building project. And we really didn't have the skills. We didn't know how to market, but we have learned. We've come a long way. So we'd like to share some of that progress with you. We like to talk about chapters in our story because we are telling a very compelling story. So one of the chapters is where we are in fundraising. First of all, through Mr. Matthews and Commissioner Williams, we have the funding to open with the basic amenities that we need. We're opening with a basic collection, furniture, and all of that. So the foundation now has the luxury of putting the cherry on top, creating more transformative, what we like to call transformative spaces, spaces that inspire. When we first started this project, we went to each one of the villages and towns and did information sessions. And overwhelmingly, all of the facilities and the municipalities wanted a place where people could gather. And I was just looking through one of my husband's recent magazines, and I understand that those are called social spaces. So we're providing for social spaces. I think during all the COVID dilemma and all of the times that we weren't in community, that this was something that people really have missed. And that's what we've built our vision around, this place where people can come to use these, what we like to call inspired spaces. And in your packet, this is one of our current inspired spaces. This goes to our fundraising and putting the cherry on the top or the frosting on the cake, whatever you want to call it. But this is our new Children's Literature Center for Early Childhood to practice the tenets of early childhood literacy from the American Library Association, where we put together reading and writing and talking and playing and singing to build those early literacy skills for all children. And Harris Teeter had given, when we were in the business of building a Weddington library and a Waxhaw library at one time, until we went to a more regional concept because of cost constraints. And when that happened, Harris Teeter had donated $100,000 for the Weddington Library in partnership, and they declined for us to give that money back to them. So we started with $100,000 fundraising from Harris Teeter. They added another $150,000, and back in January, with Commissioner Williams present, we ended up having a check presentation ceremony with Harris Teeter for $250,000 Early Childhood Literacy Center. Children are going to be able to have a food preparation. When I say food, I'm talking about, play food, and they can have Harris Teeter logo. Harris Teeter also has donated the branding, which is quite a financial package because they're going to be using their own branding and their own designers to help us with our branding. So that was our major gift so far from Harris Teeter Early Childhood Literacy Center. And then we have the Library Association of Waxhaw, our next major donor, at $100,000. The Library Association of Waxhaw was formed in about 2008 because at that time, the Weddington Library was next, the Waxhaw Library was next, and that left a Weddington and Waxhaw and Marvin and all of our municipalities without a library, and the regional library concept was born. And the Library Association of Waxhaw decided that they wanted to start an organization, and the reading room, if you've ever been in the reading room, and they have raised a lot of money through that reading room, and they've been very generous with the Waxhaw Library in supporting it. And they decided that they wanted to donate $100,000 to the new library, Southwest Regional, for an adult reading room, because that's what they've been about, is promoting adult reading. And I think, Mayor Becker, that you have been quite a consumer of their books in that room. You and I had a conversation one day about that.
Maybe Rick. I'm Jerry from Lemon Alton. Mr. Becker is quite a.
So Rick, and we've had a nice conversation on the phone in about the last 6 months to get to know each other better. So those are our two major donors. We also have a group called the Grassroots Donors that Weddington invited us to come and commemorate them. The outdoor patio has been named for that group, who back in 2007 were instrumental in raising the first funds. It was a Weddington Marvin group, and they raised the first funds for that Weddington library. And we kept that money in good faith. And so we've named the outdoor patio area after that group. So right now we had a goal of $1.5 million. And in a few short months, we have met 1/3 of that goal. So that's where we are today. And it's not as dire circumstances to raise money for basics, but now we can raise money for inspired spaces. Let me give you a little paragraph that I wrote about what I think inspired spaces are. These are spaces that invite, spaces that foster community, spaces that promote healing, spaces where new friendships are formed and connections are made, a space rich with book talk, a space where visions become action. And we're inviting WUMA to become an important part of that mission through your advocacy and through your support. So that is what we're about today and what we wanted to tell you about these new inspired spaces. Now, we also have right now some proposals out for different organizations. We have a proposal out for a sensory garden. We have a proposal out for a STEAM lab, one for a naming of a meeting room. We're very hopeful about a partnership with our local bank, where that they would come in and do financial literacy seminars, particularly youth financial literacy. So that's a very promising partnership. Now, those are all out and they're all proposals, but we've had a very good reception. So we're hoping that some of those proposals will soon become reality. Today's library is not that quiet library of the past. It's the engaging library of the future, where we establish community both within and without the walls of the library, because we get a question all the time, why do we need a brick and mortar building? And I hope I've made the case of why that we need that brick and mortar building. Hardcover books are still there, paperback books are still there, but there is so much more in that library facility. Jeff was particularly interested in sensory garden. When we did the grassroots donors commemoration at Weddington Town Hall, I mentioned about the sensory garden. Anyone in here know what a sensory garden is? It's an immersive space where all people can come to be immersed with senses. Wind chimes, bubbling brooks, natural formations, tactile spaces like moss-covered balls. But they're designed for everyone, but they're designed particularly for special populations, those with Alzheimer's, with dementia, those on the autism spectrum, where that they can come, have a physical disability, an emotional disability, but a quiet, reflective space. And the Garden Club of Weddington is very interested in this particular space and in helping us in being a consultant. They have a new one coming into the High Point Library. It's more urbane. It's on the corner in a busy town, whereas ours is going to be behind the library. Right now, there's 1/3 of an acre of space cleared out. And that's what a sensory garden is where you can come and reflect. Social communication is established. It does so much with people who particularly on the autism spectrum, where that they can have a quiet place to reflect and to sit and to have, I had a woman come up to me after the Weddington meeting and said to me, my mom has dementia, and this would be a perfect opportunity for her to be in a sensory garden. And then we have provisions for the STEAM lab that Nina talked about, where science, technology, engineering, the arts, and mathematics come together. And I was doing a speech one night at an event that we had, and my daughter said, Mom, that's a STEAM lab. My daughter is very sophisticated, and so she was correcting her mom, what her mom had said. I said, no, it's a STEAM, because arts are very much a part of the technology and the mathematics and engineering world. And speaking of events, we had a big event, the event of the spring, except maybe Rick, for the steeplechase, for your, you call that your Mineral Springs horse event. Is it called the steeplechase? Queen's Cup. So we had an event right before the Queen's Cup. It was called An Evening in Tuscany. Back in December, we wrote a proposal for Adriana Trigiani, who's a New York Times bestselling author, to be in program with us, to come and visit with us, and to do a program as a fundraising event. And I was kind of responsible for putting the words together and what we were going to offer. Well, we didn't hear anything from Adriana or her publishing company. And all of a sudden, on February the 7th, we get a response saying she liked our proposal best of all, and her publishing company wanted to send her to Union County. And Mayor Pappas, Ron, we had that event at Cedar Creek Ranch. They donated that space for a small sum of $500, and they were in partnership with us, and we brought her. So I had to quickly read the proposal, what we had promised. We had promised an Italian dinner, so that meant we had to find an Italian caterer. I'm sure it was not quite up to her standards of Tuscany, but anyway, and we compared Tuscany, her novel, with Union County and how Tuscany relates to Union County. It was a very, very successful event. And we're hoping to have another event in the fall. It will not be a dinner. My husband said, there's no way you can have a dinner for 500 people. And so it's going to be more of a reception, hopefully at the Dowd Theater. And I think if it comes true, we will have an author that everyone will really appreciate and will enjoy. So that's some of the events. This is a product of our STEAM lab that I was telling you about. It's not the actual product that's important. It's the process that young people and adults go through to get to a product. For instance, this one does not have the lettering quite right, but that was part of the process. So we hope that that's going to be an engaging place for teens. Another event we have, and it's in your packet.
I'm assuming that's teaching 3D modeling and 3D printing?
Yes. Yes, for the STEAM lab. They don't have their package yet? They do. Oh, we have extras. I'm sorry. There is a new initiative that we're starting called Stack the Shelves. What we've tried to do in fundraising is to make sure that we have different price points so everyone can contribute. We don't want anyone to ever feel that they cannot make a financial contribution. So this is our Stack the Shelves. We're going to be adding to our collection, to our basic collection, through a fundraiser. You can buy one book. There'll be a book plate inside the book. You can buy 10 books, or you can buy an entire shelf of books. And if you buy a shelf, then your name would be on the nameplate. We hope to have a brick campaign. I think Waxhaw has had a very
At the park.
yeah, in the park, that you've had such a good campaign with bricks, commemorative bricks, and that would be outside with a story walk area. And that again would be for adults and children who might be sight impaired. We're going to have Braille on the story walk. So it would be another tactile space, another place to create community. So this is our latest fundraiser. It hasn't launched quite yet, but look for it. And we thank those of you in the different municipalities for publicizing. When we send you information, you make sure you get it in your newsletter so that we can spread the word. It's hard to build a database without much funding to build a database. So we are looking to the towns so that we can increase our database. Weddington just supplied us with the names of the homeowners associations. So that is another increasing our database. So we're looking to you for those types of things.
Along that line, since you're on that, you can connect with our town, with our PIO, who we just did a recent mailing. We did a survey and sent a mailing out to every address in the town. So maybe you can connect the dots there with them and they can get you that list. It's a public list anyway.
And you know that Brenda is on our capital campaign steering committee, that she is, so she's our
So just connect
contact.
with that and make sure we can let you guys have access to that stuff to, again, further create your database. So that'll be good.
So to help us write the next chapter of the story, we need your advocacy. We need your support in whatever way and form that support takes. Any questions for me?
Well, I just wanted to thank Angela, thank you and Nita for coming out again to give us an update. As you mentioned, I know that you had made a presentation a couple of years ago before you started turning dirt and the building actually started going up. But I certainly think that this is an asset for everybody. I mean, especially for this, part of the county over here, once it gets up and running. And what I would ask is that each of us go back to our different councils, make them aware of what is happening. It's supposed to be opening next spring. And folks, advocacy doesn't cost us anything. We put out a newsletter. We've got Wedding's got a webpage. We can put things out as long as, again, you reach out to our town clerks like, Hunter, let them know when the events are coming up. We can help spread that word. And we can certainly, I think, all be advocates for this type of facility because it's got something for everybody. I mean, this is truly something that's catering to, as you said, beginning to end, whatever your station may be. There's something for our community members, for our citizens at this facility, and I'm very excited to see how that's going to come to fruition.
I just have one question. That is, the last time you were here, the discussion was that you weren't quite ready to start taking donations and things like that. And I see this one and it has information on it. But I mean, in general, how does one go about making donations?
Okay, we are very actively taking donations. Memorial gifts also. We have 2 young people on our capital campaign steering committee, and I just made gifts in their honor for their graduation. So the young people were very, very excited. There's walking paths from the schools, other schools. If you go to UC, you can do it through the website. Yes, you have it on. Yeah, that's our website. And there is, so far, our website works very well. And the donations work. You will get immediate receipt for your donation, and then you'll get a personal thank you. We have another emphasis right now. We're working on the first 100 donors to give $100. Would be called a bookmark donor, and that would come with certain privileges, like having a sneak peek at the facility before we have the groundbreaking ceremony, something like that. So we're about halfway to our goal of those bookmark donors, and so we're really making a big push through our newsletter. That will be our next newsletter, to make a big push to get those 100 bookmark donors. And Charlotte Mack Foundation has been very generous with their time, but also they have learned from us, which has been really good, that sometimes they think that their price point is too high. Whereas if we have a more reasonable price point, so you have more people to contribute who feel that they're a stakeholder in this facility.
Yes.
And in closing, if there are no other questions, I did this the other day with Weddington and with a bank that I was working with, because I just read this book. If Mr. Dietrich was here tonight, he knows that I'm Kentuckian. We have a lot to talk about Kentucky, Jamie. But we take a publication called the Kentucky Monthly that my husband devours from cover to cover. And there was an article in there, the Eastern Kentucky residents are still suffering from that awful flood that happened back last fall, and libraries wiped out, mud all over the place, unbelievable. And those librarians said in that article what I think that our librarians have become in these facilities. They become like a Swiss Army knife. Do you all have a Swiss Army knife? Mhm. Or a Leatherman? Most men do, don't they? You have it right now, just in case we have a need for it. And in that, and what she said librarians are peacekeepers, social workers, babysitters, resource officers, caregivers, resume builders, and sometimes much more than that with those struggling with life. On paper, in our western part of Union County, we look really, really good. We look very, very good demographically. We look like that we're all thriving. That's not always the case with 100% of our population. And so our librarians are providing job-seeking strategies. During COVID, they would help people write resumes. So we have that, trying to create job security. In some of our pockets of the county, we need to create more food security. The libraries are doing a lot of that work too. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mayor Joe, it's good to see you.
Somewhere up there. It disappeared.
One time he went upside down. I think that's a little disconcerting.
Great to see you too. I did have a quick question that
Sure.
you kind of led into it about the different levels of donors that you guys, it wasn't clear back then, and then you kind of clarified it. And it's good to see even that $100 one, because you'd be surprised. I would imagine you'd get a lot of people to pony up for that, to be a part of something like that. That'd be interesting to hear from. But,
Yes, and in the packet is a naming chart for the different inspired spaces. And if you'll notice, if anyone gives below $2,400, they're going to be recognized, and not with a monetary amount, but anyone that donates will be recognized.
very nice, very nice. Well, great
Thanks.
job, and thanks for coming.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Thank you again.
Too.
All right. Moving on to our next item, item B, the update and current status for county water sewer issues. I contacted and spoke with Brian Matthews, our county manager. I know that the commissioners had at their last meeting apparently went through a great number of things. They passed a new budget. They have updated many of the things that we've been talking about for the last several months. And I thought, like a better term, we'll just get it from the horse's mouth. We'll invite you.
Better than the
to
other
give us-
end, I guess.
To give us a summary, kind of a summary of the things that have, because you were here and spoke to us earlier in the year.
Certainly.
So you're already familiar with a lot of the concerns that we have. If you could just give us initially kind of a summary of the things you talked about then, what's happened, what hasn't happened,
Sure.
and kind of what the new status is on.
Absolutely. So our budget was adopted. So on June the 19th, our board did take action to adopt the budget. There were certainly some discussions about items in there, but they did take action to adopt that within the budget, specifically for water and sewer. There was the approval to do a 1.75% rate increase for a 3-year period. That would help to fund, and I want to clarify that in just a moment, but that would help to fund several projects that are outside of just doing basics. So the 12 Mile Creek wastewater treatment expansion from 7.5 million gallons to 9 million gallons, that would help to fund that project. There are some other things that are helping to pay for that as well. It would also pay for us doing our Crooked Creek Interceptor project. Again, that would go some dollars towards that. Our short line extension program, it would continue to FY22 and FY23 components of short water extension, as well as a few of our other R&R programs. Now, in order to make all of that work, we actually had to take money out of our reserves. So we took money out of our cash reserves for the enterprise, for the utility. So the way our funds work is we have depreciation calculated as part of our cash on hand. We actually used about almost $20 million of that to help to offset some of our costs for our project. So we're taking $20 million out of our depreciation reserves to help fund a lot of those projects. We're using $16 million of ARPA funds to fund the Crooked Creek Interceptor. And then the balance of the funds necessary will have to be a revenue bond. Now, I will say that the board made very clear that for future expansion projects, say if you wanted to expand 12 Mile Creek to 9 million gallons, if you wanted to build other expansion type projects, we would then have to go through a GO bond referendum for any of those projects. But for the 12 Mile Creek expansion from 7.5 to 9, that is a revenue bond. That doesn't require voter approval. That just requires us to go through our proper financial requirements, meet all those standards, issue those bonds from our revenue perspective. I don't have the exact totals that we'll need for that at this point in time. It's all going to depend on what the total cost is. I can tell you where that project stands. We are almost complete with design. I think they're about 95% is what they think we are as far as design goes. At that point in time, we will then finish all our permitting, and we will likely be bringing this back to the board for contract. Well, we'll go out to bid, obviously, sometime in late summer, and then bring this back to the board for bid, likely in the fall. One of the other things that the board did direct me to do is to come up with an allocation policy. And what I believe that they would like to see is to have that policy in place prior to them actually executing a contract for construction. So I got a fast turnaround. I'm going to have to work on a draft, disseminate that to the towns, let them see it, sit down, talk about it, discuss those methodologies and their good points and bad points, and then come back to the board with something that hopefully we can get adopted before they approve a contract.
Explain to me what that is a little bit, because I'm just not that familiar.
Sure. So one of the biggest concerns the board has expressed to me is that we have our capacity is scarce. And even if we expand our capacity, it's still a limited amount. And their concern is that one jurisdiction or maybe two jurisdictions would consume every bit of that flow with projects that they approve, and then other jurisdictions would have no access to that. And so what they'd like to do is have a mechanism or a way that each jurisdiction has some level of flow that they can count on, that they can say, this is the flow that my community can access when I'm approving projects, when I'm having development decisions. And then that flow is really sort of set aside for each jurisdiction. How we accommodate that, what the methodology is for that, that's really up in the air. What that amount is, that's going to be up for discussion as well. Because here's the thing that I've told the board that we need to keep in mind is, while we'll be expanding the plant to 1.5 million gallons, that's the expansion amount, there are already projects that are in the works that would consume some of that capacity, because there's not enough to do every one of those projects. So we've got to be cognizant of that and what that does.
The ones that are already submitted and waiting for some type of.
They're going through the review process. They're in various stages. Some of them are in the very beginnings. Some of them are farther along in engineering review. They're closer to permitting. So it just depends on where they are. But yes, there are a number of projects for 12 Mile Creek specifically that are already submitted and already waiting for some kind of approval at some point in the future.
And I'm having a senior moment here, so I apologize. 12 Mile Creek is on this side, right?
Yeah, the 12 Mile Creek is actually in Waxhaw. That's actually located in their municipality, and it serves the largest area of the county. It actually serves at least, I'm going to say probably a greater part of a third of the county. Understand, a great deal of the county, we have no sewer service whatsoever, but it serves this, what we call the Catawba Basin. And so that's what it serves, our Catawba area. You are a combination. So you have some that's in the 12 Mile Creek Basin. A good bit of you would be in the Crooked Creek Basin, but you're kind of split. And then, Waxhaw is completely within the 12 Mile Creek. Weddington has a portion that's in 12 Mile Creek as well as 6 Mile Creek. So it's really a hodgepodge of like who's where and what kind of basin are they in.
Regarding the allocation project that you just mentioned,
Mhm.
is there any way to look at other areas, whether it's within North Carolina, other counties, other big municipal areas that are, I'm sure this is not the first time this
Sure.
issue of capacity and okay, we're going to build it, but we want to make sure it's fairly distributed. Has it been given any thought to, again, researching?
Oh, absolutely.
What other municipalities or counties have done to help kind of solve that?
We are looking at all options there. Ultimately, it still has to be adopted by the board. They have to approve it, but we are certainly looking at all options for how we come up with a methodology for that. And one of the things that we also have to discuss is, is this just a policy and are there any dollars associated with it? And, there hasn't been a discussion about that. And there hasn't been a request that we ask the municipalities for dollars. This is really just about a policy, in my opinion. But the board has to say, yes, that's what we intend. This is Waxhaw, this is your allocation. Wesley Chapel, this is your allocation. I don't think we're going to get into discussion of pay to play, but obviously in some jurisdictions, that actually is how it works. There is a pay structure for being part of that.
One other thing, and I bring this up because our fire chief, McClendon, from the Wesley Chapel, who serves Weddington, gave an update to us, gave us his annual update. And one of the things he mentioned, because again, water and sewer is a hot topic right now, was he mentioned to us that like right now they're stuck at a level. Like when they get he said they had just completed their, whatever this inspection is, that the
ISO rating.
ISO ratings, and they're like at a 4. And he said, we'd love to get it down. It's like they've got the equipment, they've got the training and all
Sure.
to get it lower. He said, which would lower individuals' fire insurance rates. He said, but we're lacking the water. We're lacking the water line.
Yeah.
Is there any in the budget, in the things that you're discussing, is there any, are there any plans? I mean, I know we're talking about the sewer capacity, but for the supplying water. Is there any-
Good question. So,
on that?
yeah, so the board actually heard a report from our consultant, which was actually doing our master plan update. It was a series of 3 meetings. And they focused on pipes, capacity, all that information. It didn't give the board really any opportunity to sit down and discuss strategies and direction. So I've reached out to the board and I'm trying to set up some follow-up meeting to that. Probably going to be in August. I was hoping July, but it's probably going to be in August that we'll actually sit down with the board, roll up our sleeves and start talking about that. Water is one of those components because the consultant indicated that what we do have is we're faced with the issue of low water pressure in certain areas within the county. And the only way to accommodate that is with additional capacity and or changes to your system for how you get it there. So those are all things that we intend on discussing with the board. I have made it clear that this 1.75% rate increase is not all we'll need to consider. When they look at the list of things that we need to talk about for the rest of the system, if they decide that they are going to do some of these capital projects that are potentially items they need to do, it will likely create a rate increase. What that is, I couldn't tell you at this point in time. It's going to depend on the projects, what their appetite is for the projects, but I have explained that we will have to reconsider that in the future. And they understood that. They wanted to make sure that they accommodated the sewer capacity. Let's get that moving forward with 12 Mile Creek. Then let's revisit all of these other items and let them give us some direction on where we go with the rest of the system.
You had mentioned when you talked about the 0.75 rate increase at 3-year period. Why the cap on that?
Well, first off, we don't, when you run a model, when you run a rate model, it extends out for longer than 3 years, obviously. But you never know when you're in the future years, how fuzzy that math gets. So my philosophy at the time was, let's commit to a 3-year at a minimum, then let's revisit and see where that stands. Honestly, it may be a little bit more. It depends on the cost of doing those projects, because we're building estimates into that rate model. You don't know till you actually start paying those dollars out that it may cost more or it might cost less. Also, if we have to do other rate increases for other projects, then you might as well have that all bundled together. So that was my philosophy on it. Also, I wanted to make sure that politically, I could get the board to wrap their head around that. If I said I wanted 10 years of rate increases on it, I don't know that I would have gotten the board to agree to 10 years of rate increases, to be honest with you.
Just as long as we don't misrepresent to the taxpayers or to the ratepayers in this case, that it's 3 years, then it goes back to something else.
Sure, and that's a good point. We don't want the ratepayers to think that the rate increase, stops at 3 years. What I want to do is make sure that we can sustain whatever we have in place at whatever that rate is. And it might go down, it might go up. It just depends on what the board wants to do.
I know about expectations and things, and I know you can't say exactly where you are, but say timeline today and completion of the proposed improvements to 12 Mile. What's that timeline look like to all of us?
We're estimating that we should be operational in about a 24-month period. It could be a little bit longer than that, but we think we should be operational about 24 months. We set that up as being almost ready for expansion. So when we did the previous expansion from 6.5 to 7.5, we did a lot of pre-work. So we were prepping for the fact that we knew we needed to expand. This one should go a little bit quicker. So we're hoping in about 2 years we'll be operational.
And most of that'll be a revenue bond?
A good bit of that would be revenue bonds. Yes, sir. Don't know how much. We're estimating that project's $47 million. That's an estimate. It might be $57 million. Obviously, until we have a better idea what that cost is, it's all a matter of where do we get the money and the dollars from.
Well, it sounded like you were taking a lot of money out of reserves. I mean, that's a strategy that's
It is a one-time approach, and we have explained that. That is, that money goes away once you've spent it. So when you use your reserves, you don't have those reserves anymore. It's a risk reward, honestly. And I think that this is one of those opportunities where, we just have to get the board comfortable with there's a future decisions you're going to have to make, and what are you willing to do with those future decisions?
And I've heard you say lots of times to the board itself saying a rate increase is likely in your future, or to that effect. I mean, I think that the public needs to understand that between revenue bonds or rate increase, whatever, it's going to cost more. As you said, the project may cost more, a lot more than estimated. We've run into that. You've run into that.
Sure.
It's going to have this continuum of additional costs that are going to be passed on to somebody, ratepayers, taxpayers, whatever. Trying to say that we're not raising rates. At the end of the day, the bottom line is taxpayer pays more. Any way you look at it.
Ratepayer. I mean, for the utility, it's a ratepayer issue. It's not
That's a revenue.
obviously a ratepayer is a taxpayer, but
Right.
not all taxpayers are ratepayers. So that's how you structure that. I do want to point out that we did adopt a new system development fee ordinance that did allow the sewer to go up significantly. Water went down significantly. Hopefully that will generate some revenue to help us with that. We do believe that when the board gives us further direction on other projects to do, that we will revisit that system development fee study. We can do it as often as we want. We just have to do it at least every 5 years. So if we decide to add more projects, we'll likely redo that, and that will adjust that fee accordingly. We don't know what that's going to be.
The system development fee, though, can only go up as you're under construction with
Yeah, it really is based on the capital that you're putting into your system. There's a little bit of maintenance goes in there, but it's mostly capital. So when you're spending a lot of capital, you can recoup more money from your capital. When you're not, you can't get back much from your system development fee. So it's all tied to what projects you do and how you do that.
So you have to do the project to be able to get the money.
You do, absolutely. And the reason it went up is because we agreed to do the 12 Mile Creek expansion, because otherwise it was actually going to go down. But because we added that project in to the study, it bolstered that amount that we could collect for that. And that was beneficial. Actually, I think that helped the board appreciate that we needed to really have that project done.
Stephen's point earlier about the taking it to 9, and we'll talk about the mechanics of between 7.5 and 9 and what isn't used today of the 7.5 and changing of the number, although the county's number is probably lower than the new state law that just got passed the other day.
I knew it was under consideration, even I don't know if it was passed yet or not.
Well, it's almost signed around, I guess. It's veto proof. So
Okay.
it's probably going to happen. What kind of dialogue have you guys had about taking it beyond 9?
None, as far as I would say, as a serious discussion at this point in time. I honestly, the strategy for us is we got to get the board educated and comfortable with what needs to be done to keep the system operating efficiently. From there, it's then about expansion. And I honestly don't know where they stand with expansion for the rest of it. They've not given me any commitments on that.
Well, I certainly appreciate you. Or you got one more question here.
You guys take as long as you want. I know it's your time, but you ask whatever questions you want.
So the question was what kind of dialogue that they've had between the 9 that they're now committing to and the 12 can take it up.
That's the part I didn't hear.
Yeah, I understood he was asking, would we go to 12 at some point in time? Honestly, I think it's one step at a time. It's really getting the board to understand that, there are some things that we need to do from a system approach that have nothing to do with capacity. We have system issues we need to address, and then we have capacity issues. And they heard all of that in the master plan discussion. And it's about then going, okay, we know it. What do we do for the future?
You're redoing the master plan now, or revising it, revisiting it, the old plan. What's the differences between the old plan and where we think we should be today?
So we actually reduced a lot of the areas from the old plan that were considered possible areas to serve. So we scaled back a lot of areas that we would have served based on the old plan. The location of the wastewater treatment plant for Crooked Creek obviously changed. It was originally going to be closer to the Unionville area. That's now moved potentially to Site B. So that was different. The plan also went in and really updated where we stand as far as the efficiency of the system and how we manage our IBT. And that's a big part of it. What the average citizen doesn't realize is that we send a lot of our Catawba water over into the Yadkin Basin to serve our Yadkin portion of the county. As we bring online the water plant for Yadkin, we'll start to flow more water into that area. However, what you can't do is you can't send a bunch of water from Yadkin over into Catawba. We don't have the ability to do that. We don't have what's called an interbasin transfer to do that. We only have an interbasin transfer to send Catawba water into Yadkin. So how we manage that is really crucial. And what the board heard is that we're going to have some challenges with our system as the future goes with what do we do with that Yadkin water and how do we use it to its best ability. There's going to be a point at which we're going to have to make a decision about pulling that Catawba water back and fully flowing Yadkin, but then how do we accommodate the wastewater that comes with that? So those are all challenges that we're faced, and the consultant laid that out, that these are things that you're going to have to address and deal with. And that was not really part of the original master plan because we just didn't know how that was going to work in the original master plan.
And Crooked is DOA yet, or is still operational?
Obviously, we don't have a speculative limits from that. We were told recently by DEQ that they anticipate maybe late July or August. What we understand from DEQ is that there are multiple jurisdictions in the Rocky River Basin that are requesting speculative limits to flow in the Rocky River. The state normally takes an individual approach. They didn't want to do that. They said, nope, we want to look at all of these requests in a holistic view, and then we'll issue speculative limits to each entity based on that. So that's why it's slower. Normally, we probably have them by now, but they're looking at all of those requests. So we anticipate we'll have that hopefully late July or early August. We'll have a better idea of what those limits are. Once we have those limits, then it's really about talking to the board about what are the next steps. Are they going to authorize us to do the environmental studies, which I'll recommend? That's what we should do, because it'll take several years to do those studies. And then after we do the studies, what's our next step from there?
Would there be any 2 or 3 just bullet points that you would want each of us to take back to our respective councils on if you had to summarize it, distill it down into, to, hey, you know, when each of us comes back and says, hey, we had the county manager at our WUMA meeting. He gave us an update on the current status of things, and here's what we need you to know. I mean,
I would say, I'd say, well, first and foremost, we're not done. The board is going to be discussing the more of the system decisions and more of the issues that we're going to have to deal with in the next month or two. I'm going to say either late July, August, we'll have some work sessions with the board. That's an important thing that your boards need to know. Also, it's important for your boards to need to know that we will be sending out and seeking feedback on this allocation policy and how that works, the methodology, how we structure, who gets what, and how that works. I think that's an important component of it. And then last but not least, I think that, and this is just something, and I think the chairman still, and I think the board would still like to revisit having a joint meeting of all the towns and the county and talk more about where do we go in the future. He has mentioned that to me on a number of occasions. I think that's a good idea, but I think it's a better idea if we've done some of these things first, so then you have something you can talk about.
Okay, well, I was just going to follow up with that, because I know at the May meeting, the chairman mentioned having a meeting with just the mayor.
And he calls it that.
And like I said, but you need to wait until more of these things are solidified.
Well, that's my recommendation.
Okay.
My recommendation to the chairman was that I think we really need to have some things more to react to. And that way, then you have something that you can respond to, because you've seen what we've done. You've heard the comments from the board. And he nodded and said, okay, I think that's reasonable. So we haven't set a time frame for that, but I know that's something he'd like to do. And whether that's mayors and commissioners or whatever that structure looks like, I know he's interested in that.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Any more questions?
All right, I think we're good. And
All right.
Now I'd like to invite Commissioner David Williams to come up. I know at the meeting Monday night, he made a proposal to the rest of the commission that I thought was interesting. And David just was hoping you could let the group know about that.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, and I invite you just to ask me any questions that you might have, especially about water and sewer. I think it's good to get various perspectives on an issue like this, and I'm happy to speak to that also. One of the things I did mention at the Monday night meeting was in my overall response on the budget, which I voted against, and Commissioner Richard Helms voted against. I spoke at length about many of the challenges facing us as a county, and especially our water and sewer enterprise, our water and sewer utility. And one of the things I had suggested is that it is high time for us to set up a study committee of sorts of commissioners, ultimately of county commissioners, but also town leaders and perhaps other stakeholders, and talk about what perhaps a reformed water and sewer authority might look like. Because in this commissioner's opinion, and I know right now, I mean, there's no doubt I'm in the minority. I'm in a minority of 2 right now on the board. But in this commissioner's opinion, it's high time to look at changing our water and sewer authority, because it just isn't working and hasn't been working for a long time, having 5 commissioners run it. We haven't been taking a long-term approach to solving issues that have a long timeline. I mean, when we talk about water and sewer capital projects, you're talking about projects often that have a very long, very extended timeline. And when you've got 5 commissioners that are making decisions about these projects, especially commissioners perhaps are new to the board, or commissioners who've just come on as a result of a sweeping change from the primary or the general election, you're apt to get decisions that aren't necessarily good for the health of the entity, for the health of the water and sewer utility. And this is not just the fault or a problem with this current board, but it's been a problem for a while. You know, let's be honest. And we get to this point where we're facing extraordinarily pressing needs and challenges as a utility, but we haven't been doing the long-term planning. We haven't been doing not so much planning, but planning for those funding streams that are going to make possible the financing of these capital projects. So we end up in a battle royal as a county commission, and we end up making a decision that raises rates, 12, 15%, and nobody's pleased with that. But it's a consequence of the fact that there is profound dysfunction, in my opinion, in how the utility is operated. And I think it's time to look at perhaps expanding it, bringing in municipal partners. Let's instead of defining specifically what that looks like, this commissioner would like to see conversations accelerating and happening more often among you municipal leaders and us county commissioners about what a new authority might look like. And if this present board isn't prepared to put the stamp of approval on an official effort, well, then this commissioner, and I suspect a second commissioner, is prepared to have those conversations informally. And let's start talking about alternatives to what, in my mind, is profound disruption that is hurting the county. So that was really what I recommended. I invite all of you, I invite municipal leaders and key stakeholders throughout the county to have those conversations with me about what this authority might look like. Because one of the points I made Monday night was, if this dysfunction continues, it's possible that a solution might be imposed on us from above. I mean, we all know as elected officials in local government, I mean, state government, we're all creatures of state government. And I would much rather have us locally figure this out and reform it and get a water and sewer authority that is much improved from what we have today than to have something imposed on us and perhaps membership that's not even from Union County. So that was really what I did want to talk about. Also, again, just I offer myself to you in terms of any questions you might have about this or anything else in terms of the duties I discharge in my position.
Any questions from anybody on?
Well, this is all in concert with some of the resolutions that the municipalities, so Waxhaw, Marvin, and Weddington, and then the Union County Chamber are basically for public information here, is that they've passed those resolutions to basically the same ask.
Yeah.
As to, we need to take a look at things differently than we've used to. We've grown, we have probably more informed people at other locations than what was before. I mean, the county's growing, different people come in, different skill sets come in as well. So I think it's going to be important, at least from my standpoint, to create that kind of we'll say a look-see, whether it be a subcommittee or some type, whatever, to, because I think you're right. And I think, I think the county understands too, that there are mistakes in the past that are forcing us to kick the can down the road. And as I said earlier with fees and stuff, I mean, we're going to have to pay more for what we get, period. I don't care how you cut it, say it, can skirt the issue 10 ways from Friday. The end of the line is, to Brian's point earlier about, they've got some infrastructure issues that they have to solve as well. Not only just the construction of new, but the infrastructure issues as well. So I think it's probably time to look at that.
Yeah, and on that second point, I mean, much of the conversation about our water and sewer utility focuses on capacity constraints and the crisis that exists there. But, to my mind, we should be talking just as much about, fixing stuff that breaks, repair and replacement. I mean, we've got a long list of halted projects now in our water and sewer enterprise that we're just not doing anything with because we don't have a rate model that will fund them. And that's a real problem when you've got fire flow issues, water pressure issues, issues with inflow and infiltration. I mean, we had, I think Brian mentioned that Brown and Caldwell last month did a presentation for the board about problems that are manifest in the system right now or will be in 3 years. And there are a good number of them. And, and it's going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars. I think the number was over 600 million that Brown and Caldwell presented on. But, these are problems about stuff breaking, stuff needing to be fixed, improvements to the system, delivering the kind of system efficiency and running the utility with in a way that it deserves to be run. And, when this current board rolled back water and sewer rates, I pleaded with the majority to slow down. I mean, you don't know anything about the projects you're about to halt. We don't know what the consequences are for halting those projects. Take your time. It's okay to take your time in this job. Unfortunately, that wisdom wasn't heeded. We are staring at, we have adopted a 1.75% rate increase, which is better than none. But we are ready, Brian has said, we're ready to, engage in discussions about raising it even further. Because we, hopefully, the five of us see the problems. We see what needs to be addressed, and the rate model that we have now, even with a 1.75% increase, just isn't adequate to address those needs. And, you had heard from Brian that, we've done some short-term things that, I voted against. I don't think we should weaken or lessen finance best practices. As a general rule, that's something you don't want to do. But we've taken some short-term funds. We've done this 1.75% rate increase. We've taken tens of millions of dollars in ARPA funds to try to cobble together enough money, to get the Crooked Creek Interceptor done, to make a decent start on the expansion at 12th Mile. But you've heard, that's still not enough. We've still got to do revenue bond issuance. And, I think that might be challenging, when the rating agencies and the capital markets look at us and they say, okay, well, you've rolled back your rates, you've spent down your excess reserves, you've eliminated depreciation expense as an item in calculating your operating reserve. How are we supposed to respond to this, as a rating analyst and as the capital market generally? So, I think these are some serious questions that more than two board members need to be, concerned about.
You can only spend down your piggy bank for so long.
Yeah.
Well, I think David and Brian, you touched on this as well. I think for all of the stuff, for a better word, that we've all been going through over this issue for the last several months, I think one of the good things that's coming out of it is we're talking. Brian, having you here, Mr. Williams having you here, and again, as I said to him before, all the commissioners have an open invitation to these WUMA meetings every month, and if I need to reiterate that, I will. But the more we can talk, I think, is, whether the system stays the same or whether something new is put in place, we've got to talk about these issues, problems that we've got. And again, to your point, David, I've lived in this county 30 years now, and water and sewer issues were a problem when I moved here.
Yeah.
This is not an ownership thing for this one particular board that's sitting right
It's
now.
a string of boards.
This has been decades in the making.
Yeah.
But we're all adults in here. We all know at some point you've got to say, all right, we're going to make some hard decisions, some tough decisions. And we've got to look long-term versus just election cycles on decisions for
Yeah.
water and sewer. And that's the way I would.
And that's what governing is all about. I mean, campaign mode is campaign mode, but at some point we've got to govern and solve real problems and fix stuff. And I do want to, I said this Monday night and I said it, I think in our meetings in May, and I want to say again, I want to compliment Brian Matthews and the senior staff. Even though I voted against the budget, I understand that it was presented based on constraints imposed on it by the board and obstacles that have been put before the county. So to that extent, I think what Brian submitted is a reasonable response. But my point is, and perhaps a 1.75% increase in water and sewer rates is better than none. I mean, at least it gets us going in the right direction. So I do want to say that, because I think we've got very competent county senior staff, and they're trying to navigate this as best they can. I'm trying to navigate it as best I can. And to your point, Jeff, I think what do? We continue to have these conversations, more of them and more often. So.
I just got to reiterate Jeff and what he said. I appreciate you coming in. I appreciate your, zest to get this, to a point where people really start thinking about what you're saying, because you've made some profound statements here today and what we got to do addressing forward. But this is something that's going on forever.
Yeah.
And making a pun here, dysfunctional is gravity fed. It comes down to us. And then we look dysfunctional. And just, simple issues that can be addressed. It seems as though we are taking 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. We're putting our own roadblocks in place. We have got to put a plan in place that whether we like it or not, it's got to serve the constituents of Union County, Eastern, Western, Southern, Northern. It's got to do that. We can't continue to go. We're doing everything we can. Here we are signing resolutions. You guys, I know you're getting beat up, not only from you getting beat up by all the municipalities and the Chamber of Commerce. I mean, that's not good. And we're doing everything we can. I appreciate your honesty. I appreciate your, again, your, emphasis on,
My zeal. I mean, I want what's best for this county. I truly do. I mean, and when I see problems like this not getting fixed, I mean, I'm troubled.
This isn't, and to Jeff's point, this isn't a new problem.
Yeah.
I've been here for over 20 years and we keep addressing it. And I don't know if it's kick the can down the road or if it's, we don't have the cojones to address the system, address what's happening. But this isn't, all of these things are, it's like we take a step forward. Brian, I appreciate everything. The 1.75% increase.
We're going to have to start wrapping up here because they've got another event starting at 6. If just real quick,
I just want to know, I mean, we have 3 towns that have sent things to the state as a resolution. And I knew you had the meeting in early May. What kind of ongoing conversations are still happening based on?
Well, I think the most important thing, and Jeff touched on it as well, the most important thing is we cannot have enough communication. We have to over communicate, because if you got someone sitting over here and someone sitting over here and they're doing their thing and we're begging over here, it does no good. And so you had proposed a joint meeting with the municipalities in the future on a regular basis, because honestly, when you look at someone in the eye, you get something accomplished as opposed to just social media, worst thing in the world
Yeah.
for us.
Yeah.
Cannot stand social media. And we've got partners in this game that are playing in social media. And I don't, none of us want to deal with keyboard cowboys. Don't want to do it. And that's not getting anything done because that's just throwing stones and knowing nothing can come back at you. We've got to fix this, and it's got to be adult conversations to move it forward.
Well, I do think, Brian, as soon as you can talk with the chairman and figure out when that time for that meeting is going to be and who the invitees are, Commissioner Williams, you know, that's up to the chairman and you guys. But I know that's a conversation we all need to have. To your point, I know those resolutions were given to Senator Johnson at the May 1st meeting. And I think, you know, like many resolutions, it's kind of a, hey, this is an issue that we feel is important, but there's not been any, you know, the state hasn't taken any action, if that's the question that you're asking.
Well, I mean, it seems to me like that's something that's going to need to be pushed.
Well,
Right, well,
Senator Johnson said, he mentioned in the thing, he said, it's vital. And I even had a one-off with him. It's vital that we have meetings. of that.
Yes, and so I think this is just part of the process of ongoing with that. Again, I hate to rush, but I know there's another meeting due in here and I want them to get ready for it. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Very much for your information. I do appreciate it. And again, appreciate you coming. We'll probably invite you back again in the future.
Got Joe back up there. Joe, did you have any comments?
Oh, no, I just want to thank David for coming in. I appreciate that and getting the update. I wish I was there, but I know in a sense of time, we're limited. And David, we'll be reaching out to you to probably get together with some elected officials just to kind of keep that conversation going. So again, appreciate your time.
That sounds great.
Okay, next item is new business, and hopefully it will not take very long. Y'all should have gotten a copy of our proposed schedule for the next, basically for the next year. We will not be meeting in July, but you can see there in August, we've got the proposed meeting. Basically, the sequence would go Mineral Springs, Wedding, Stallings, Wesley Chapel, Marvin, Waxhaw. And then we would recycle again starting next March. So if y'all are good with that, I mean, obviously if there's changes, we've been able to make, we are able to make changes as we progress, but if y'all are good with this proposed meeting schedule, if I've got a motion to approve it, then we'll take the vote and we'll get past that.
Make a motion to approve.
Second. Looks good. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. So we've got that new schedule and this will be published on the webpage along with the minutes that are coming up. All right, the last thing we've got here is delegate comments, and I'll start from the opposite side here this time of Mineral Springs.
Well, obviously, because I'm an alternate, I'm not tuned into things that are going on all the time, but I really enjoy coming to the meetings and then sharing, obviously, those things that are brought forth for the council as I can. I made a number of notes. And I appreciate the opportunity to be part of the team.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
In the interest of time, I'll keep it under 2 hours, which is normal. So, but I want to thank you guys for both coming up. I know Brian's got quite a job to do over there as well, trying to please 27 masters over there. So appreciate that. And then appreciate you, David, coming over and chatting with us today. Again, there are a lot of stakeholders around us in the room, which we'd like to involve in some of those discussions because they are very key to some planning thoughts. So.
Jamie?
Ditto. Thanks for you guys coming in. I mean, that's a real big issue. I'm happy to be a part of this. This is my first time doing it and certainly enjoyed it and really appreciate everyone coming and being a part of that. So thanks.
Steve?
Same thing. I appreciate you guys coming. Again, part of keeping that communication line open. And I think it keeps the backroom conversation down when we can do it publicly and have real discussion. So we appreciate it. Thank you.
And we had our first movie night a couple weeks ago, Memorial Day weekend, and it went really well. And I just wanted to give a shout out to your Parks and Rec staff or like the people who coordinated that. It was really well done and they really had their stuff together. So it was great. We're looking forward to the next one.
I'll thank you gentlemen again for being here. I know it's other part of your otherwise work day that you're doing with the county anyway. I do appreciate that. I appreciate everybody else being here as well. Thank you, Hunter, for being here. I'm sorry, Austin, for taking care of us here today and keeping us straight. Thank you to Marvin for hosting. And as I always try to end with, time is the most valuable resource we all have, folks. And I appreciate the fact that everybody that's in here felt that this was important enough to take a couple hours out of your day to be here. And I do appreciate that very much. So with that, if there's a motion to adjourn. So moved. All in
Second.
favor?
All in favor, aye.
We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Except for Joe, I mean, he couldn't take time away from.
He's been sitting in his car.
Yeah, Joe.
I'm sitting in my car while they're enjoying the beach out there. So I'm going to go enjoy them with them now. So
We're just giving you a hard time, man.
I know, but I thought that I wanted to be in on this meeting. So thank you.
Thank you.